Before Jesus opened the eyes of a man who had never once seen the face of his own mother, before he called a man named Lazarus out of a tomb that had already been sealed for 4 long days, before he stood on the deck of a small fishing boat and silenced a storm that was about to drag his closest friends to the bottom of the sea, there was always one quiet, sacred thing he did first. One single moment, one ancient practice woven so deeply into who he was that once you finally see it, your entire prayer life will never be the same again. And I'm asking you to stay with me through this whole message, because what I am about to share with you is not just a lesson in history. It is the missing key, the forgotten piece you have been quietly searching for every single time you have poured your heart out to heaven and walked away wondering why your prayers felt like they were getting stuck somewhere between your ceiling and the sky. If you are hungry for your prayer life to come alive again, if something in you is whispering yes right now, type the words "teach me" in the comments below. Type it with faith, type it with expectation, and tap that like button, because every time you do, the algorithm carries this message to another tired soul who needs to hear it tonight. Someone who has been crying in the dark, praying through the long hours, and quietly wondering if the one they call Father is even listening anymore. I want to take you back 2,000 years to the dust and heat of ancient Galilee. Picture the scene with me. A young Jewish rabbi from Nazareth walks from village to village, and everywhere his feet touch the ground, the impossible begins to unfold. The deaf hear the sound of their own children laughing for the first time. The crippled fling away their walking sticks and dance like they are at a wedding. Demons scream and flee at the mere sound of his voice. Storms collapse into stillness like servants bowing before their master. But here is the thing the world has somehow missed, and it is the thing that absolutely undid me when I first really saw it. Jesus was not just a worker of wonders. He was a Jewish rabbi, raised inside the rich, ancient soil of his people's tradition, and every single thing he did was deeply rooted in practices that stretched back centuries before he ever drew his first breath. And there is one specific practice, one quiet pattern of prayer that he leaned into before nearly every miracle he performed. And when scholars and rabbis and serious students of the word started looking carefully at the original texts in the language Jesus actually spoke, they discovered something that will shake the foundation of how you have been praying. In the deep heritage of his people, there is this beautiful, almost poetic concept called brachot. It is the Hebrew word for blessings, but it carries a weight in its original form that our modern ears have almost completely lost. For the ancient Jewish people, a bracha was not just a polite phrase you murmured before a meal. It was an entire way of moving through the world. It was the way you acknowledged that every breath in your lungs, every drop of water that crossed your lips, every piece of bread that nourished your body, every quiet sunrise, every encounter with a stranger, every joy and every sorrow, all of it came from the open hand of God. The rabbis of old taught their students to speak no fewer than 100 blessings every single day. 100 moments of pausing, looking up, and acknowledging the presence of the Holy One in even the smallest details. Stop and let that sink in for a moment. Many of us struggle to find the words for one short prayer at the end of the day, and they were lifting their hearts in blessing 100 times between sunrise and sunset. And this was not heavy religious obligation hanging around their necks. This was intimacy. This was a way of walking through life with the constant, steady awareness that you are never alone, that the air you breathe is a gift, that every good and perfect thing flows from the Father of lights. Jesus, growing up in that small carpenter's house in Nazareth, sitting on benches in the synagogue, learning Torah from the rabbis of his region, was completely soaked in this tradition. He breathed it in. He lived it out. It was woven into the very fabric of his daily existence, the way a song is woven into the heart of someone who has been singing it since childhood. And here is where it becomes almost breathtaking. When you go back through the Gospels and you read the miracle accounts slowly, prayerfully, with your spiritual eyes wide open, you start to notice a thread, a quiet golden thread running through nearly every supernatural encounter. Just before heaven breaks into earth, just before the impossible bends its knee and becomes the inevitable, Jesus does something specific, something so familiar to any Jewish person watching that they would have recognized it instantly. He lifts his eyes toward heaven, he gives thanks, and only then does the miracle pour out into the visible world. Let me show you what I mean, because once you see this, you cannot unsee it. In the 11th chapter of John, Lazarus is not just sick, he is not napping. He has been dead for 4 full days, sealed in a tomb in the heat of the Middle Eastern sun. His sisters Mary and Martha are wrecked. They are grieving. They are angry. They are confused. They both say, almost in protest, "If you had been here, our brother would not have died." And Jesus stands at the mouth of that tomb. And before he ever speaks the words that will literally tear the grip of death loose, watch what he does. He lifts his eyes. He looks up to heaven. And he says, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." Did you catch that? Lazarus is still in the tomb. The stone has just been rolled away. The smell of death is still in the air. And Jesus is already giving thanks. He is operating from such a deep, unbroken connection with the Father that the answer is already settled in his spirit before anyone else can see it with their eyes. Or look at the 7th chapter of Mark. A man who cannot hear and who can barely speak is brought to Jesus by people who love him. They are begging for help. Jesus pulls the man gently away from the noise of the crowd. He places his fingers in the man's ears. He touches his tongue. And then the text says something so easy to skip past. Looking up to heaven, he sighed, and then he spoke the word that opened everything. Once again, that upward look, that conscious, deliberate connection with the Father, that quiet, steady reminder that the power was never coming from Jesus the man. It was flowing through him from the one above. He is not putting on a show. He is teaching. He is showing us with his own life that miracles are not produced by clever techniques or spiritual formulas or shouting until your voice gives out. They flow from intimacy. They flow from connection. They flow from a heart that lives in unbroken communion with the source of all life. And then, of course, there is the moment we all know but rarely truly see. 5,000 hungry people scattered across a hillside, miles from any village. The disciples are already in panic mode. "Send them away," they whisper. "We cannot feed this many." But a young boy steps forward and offers his lunch. 5 small barley loaves and 2 little fish. The kind of meal that would barely satisfy one growing child, let alone a crowd. And what does Jesus do in that moment? Luke records it with such tender precision. He took the loaves and the fish, he looked up to heaven, he gave thanks, and he broke them. He looked up, he gave thanks, and then the impossible quietly began to unfold in his hands. Bread kept appearing, fish kept multiplying, 12 baskets full of leftovers gathered from a child's lunch. And it all began with that one simple act of gratitude, with that upward glance that whispered, "Father, you are the source. You are the provider. Everything I have ever needed has always come from you." Now here is what is shaking my own heart as I share this with you, and I believe with everything in me that it is going to land squarely where you are sitting tonight. Maybe you have been praying for something for months, maybe years. Maybe you have cried out so many times that you have stopped keeping count. Maybe you have started to wonder if heaven has gone silent on you, if your prayers are hitting some kind of invisible ceiling and falling lifeless to the floor. And what if, just what if, the issue has never been that God is not listening, but that we have somehow forgotten how to actually pray? What if we have slowly, without even noticing, turned prayer into a wish list, a spiritual vending machine, a panic button we slap when nothing else works? What if we have lost the truth that prayer was always meant to be connection long before it was ever petition? What if the whole rhythm was supposed to begin with thanksgiving, with that sacred upward look, with the quiet acknowledgement of who He is, before we ever got around to what we need? There is someone watching this right now, and I want to speak directly to you because I believe your spirit is already responding to these words. You have been praying out of desperation instead of out of relationship. You have been approaching the Father like a stranger, nervously stepping into a king's throne room, instead of like a child climbing into the lap of the one who has loved you since before time began. You have been so fixated on the miracle you need that you have almost forgotten the greater miracle of the one who is already with you. And I sense the Father saying tonight, stop straining, stop bargaining, stop trying to convince me of anything. I already know what you need. I already have the answer prepared. But before any of that, I want you. I want your eyes lifted. I want your heart present. I want you to remember who I am and to thank me for what I have already done before you ever ask for what comes next. This is the secret that has been hidden in plain sight in every miracle Jesus ever performed. This is the ancient wisdom that turns prayer from a weight you carry into a place you rest, from striving into surrender, from words bouncing off the ceiling into conversations that quietly shift the atmosphere of heaven itself. And the part that should bring tears to your eyes if you are paying attention is this: Jesus was never showing off. He was never performing. Every time he lifted his eyes to heaven, every time he gave thanks before the miracle, he was leaving a trail. He was showing us the way home. He was demonstrating with his own life what real intimacy with the Father looks like. He was telling us, without using these exact words, that the life of a true follower is not about working up enough faith to twist God's arm into action. It is about resting inside a relationship where the answer flows naturally out of the connection. The ancient rabbis carried a teaching that I think will rearrange something in your spirit. They taught that gratitude is the highest form of prayer, because gratitude is a declaration that God has already moved on your behalf. When you give thanks, you are not just being polite, you are stepping into a prophetic posture. You are declaring, I believe you are good. I believe you are faithful. I believe that even in this hard place, even in this long waiting, even in this situation that looks impossible from where I am standing, you are quietly weaving everything together for my good because you love me. And that kind of trust, that kind of rest in the goodness of God is what shifts atmospheres. It is what opens doors that were welded shut. It is what causes chains to fall and demons to flee and angels to be dispatched on your behalf. So now I want to bring this all the way home and put it directly into your hands. What is the impossible thing you are facing tonight? What is the situation that has felt too big, too heavy, too tangled for too long? Maybe it is financial and the bills keep arriving faster than the paychecks. Maybe it is a marriage that feels colder than it has ever been. Maybe it is a child who has wandered far from home and seems unreachable. Maybe it is your body and the doctors have used words you cannot bring yourself to repeat out loud. Maybe it is a heaviness in your mind that has settled in so deeply you can hardly remember what peace used to feel like. And you have been praying, you have been asking, you have been begging, and it has felt like the heavens are made of iron. But what if the Father is simply waiting for you to shift? From petition to position, from begging to believing, from shouting across what feels like a canyon to realizing He has been whispering right next to you the entire time. Because here is what Jesus was quietly modeling for us. Gratitude is not denial. Thanksgiving is not pretending the storm is not real. It is the deliberate, courageous choice to remember who God is even while the storm is still raging. It is anchoring yourself in His faithfulness in the past as the foundation for your trust in this moment. It is saying, I do not understand what you are doing right now. I cannot see how this could possibly come together, but I know who you are. I remember what you have already carried me through, and I choose to thank you here, in this valley, in this waiting room, in this exact place. And when you begin to pray from that posture, when your prayers rise out of connection rather than panic, something quietly begins to shift. Often the circumstances themselves begin to move, but always, without fail, something inside you begins to change. Faith stops feeling like a heavy weight you are dragging behind you and starts feeling like the very air you breathe. Prayer stops being an exhausting marathon of trying to convince a reluctant God and becomes a conversation with the one who already knows, already cares, already has the answer prepared. So tomorrow morning, before you ask the Father for a single thing, before you bring the list of needs and worries and unanswered questions, I want you to do something simple but life-shifting. Spend 10 quiet minutes just thanking Him. Thank Him that you woke up. Thank Him for the breath in your chest. Thank Him for the water that runs from your tap and the roof above your head and the eyes that can read these words. Thank Him for every prayer He has already answered, every door He has already opened, every storm He has already carried you through. And as you do this, you will feel it. The anxiety begins to loosen its fingers. The fear quiets down. The mountain in front of you starts to look different when it is viewed from a heart full of gratitude. Because miracles do not happen because we pray loud enough or long enough. They flow because we have connected deeply enough. They are born out of intimacy, not intensity. Jesus did not need to work Himself up before healing the sick. He did not need to fast for 40 days before multiplying bread. He did not need a prayer team before raising the dead. He simply lifted His eyes, gave thanks, and allowed the power that was already flowing through His life to touch the need standing in front of Him. And the staggering, almost too good to be true reality is that the same Spirit that lived in Him has been offered to you. The same access to the Father is open to you. The same invitation to live from connection rather than striving is being extended to you tonight. So if your heart is saying yes, type "teach me" in the comments right now. Type it if you are tired of prayer feeling like a duty and you are hungry for it to become a real conversation again. Type it if you want to learn this quiet, ancient way of walking with God that Jesus showed us with every miracle He ever performed. Tap subscribe because we are going to keep walking deeper into these forgotten truths together. And like this video, so the message can find its way to another weary soul who needs to hear that their prayers have been heard, their tears have been counted, and their Father is already moving on their behalf. The prayer Jesus prayed before every miracle was never a complicated formula. It was always something simple and beautiful. He looked up, He connected with heaven, He gave thanks that the Father is exactly who He has always said He is. And when you start to pray that way, when you start to live that way, miracles slowly stop being rare interruptions in your life and begin to feel like the natural overflow of a life quietly anchored in heaven. Shalom.